This is a journey into the most uncomfortable truth of the human condition. The fact that you can possess all the wisdom of the world and still remain exactly the same person you were 10 years ago. We are beginning the first part of this exploration now. What if every book you have ever read about self-improvement, every podcast you have listened to, and every profound insight you have uncovered is actually the very thing preventing you from changing? It is a disturbing thought, yet it touches on a fundamental paradox of human consciousness. We often mistake the map for the territory, believing that because we can describe the mountain, we have already climbed it. In the quiet corners of our minds, we collect insights like digital trophies, convinced that the aha moment is the finish line, when in reality, it hasn't even brought us to the starting gate. The ancient mystery schools and the 20th century masters of the soul understood a secret that modern culture has largely forgotten. The mind is a master of mimicry. It can simulate transformation so perfectly that you feel the euphoria of growth without ever having to face the friction of reality. P.D. Ouspensky, following the radical teachings of Gurdjieff, suggested that most of us live in a state of waking sleep. In this state, we dream that we are changing. We dream that we are evolving, but our actual lives remain governed by the same mechanical impulses and chemical habits that ruled us yesterday. There is a specific psychological trap, a hidden loop in the human hardwiring that turns knowing into a substitute for being, and it is the primary reason why most people who seek transformation ultimately fail to find it. In this exploration, we are going to dismantle the shelf-help trap and look at why your brain prefers the comfort of theory over the danger of practice. First, we will decode the alchemy of friction and why Gurdjieff believed that without physical resistance, the soul cannot crystallize. Then, we will look at the 3 invisible barriers that turn your best intentions into hollow echoes. We will explore the shadow of the intellectual, a concept buried in Jungian thought that explains why the most aware people are often the most paralyzed. And finally, we will face a question that rewrites everything we think we know about the relationship between the observer and the actor. If your thoughts are not the engine of your transformation, what is the actual mechanism that turns a ghost of a dream into a living reality? Imagine for a moment that you are standing in front of a vast, empty plot of land, holding the most exquisite architectural blueprints ever drawn. Every detail is perfect: the marble columns, the orientation to the sun, the intricate plumbing, and the aesthetic flow of the rooms. You spend years studying these plans. You memorize every line, you discuss the philosophy of the space with other enthusiasts, and you feel the immense pride of owning such a magnificent design. But as the sun sets, you realize you are still standing in the mud, shivering in the rain, with no roof over your head. This is the architect's fallacy, and it is the silent epidemic of the modern seeker. We have become a culture of master designers who live in the mud because we have mistaken the clarity of the plan for the solidity of the walls. The conventional wisdom of our era tells us that if we change our mindset, our lives will follow. We are told that thoughts are the primary drivers of reality, and that by reprogramming our mental software, the hardware of our existence will miraculously update. While there is a grain of truth in this, it ignores a much deeper, more ancient observation shared by figures like Gurdjieff and later echoed in the clinical observations of Jordan Peterson. They suggest that the mind is not a leader, but a sophisticated public relations department. Its job isn't to change you. Its job is to justify why you are staying exactly as you are while making it feel like you are moving. When you read a profound book and feel that rush of knowing, your brain releases dopamine, simulating the reward of an actual achievement. You feel like you've grown, but your bank account, your relationships, and your physical health remain untouched. You have eaten the menu, but you haven't tasted the food. The great mistake we make is believing that consciousness resides purely in the intellect. Rudolf Steiner argued that true human development requires a bridge between thinking, feeling, and willing. If the will, the part of you that actually moves through the physical world, is not engaged, the thinking becomes a ghost, a hollow shell that eventually turns into a source of bitterness. This is why some of the most intellectually brilliant people are also the most stagnant. They are trapped in a feedback loop of high-resolution thoughts and low-resolution actions. They can explain the shadow, as Carl Jung described it, with surgical precision, yet they continue to be sabotaged by the same self-destructive patterns because they are trying to think their way out of a hole that was dug by doing. What if every ancient tradition that spoke of awakening or the path wasn't talking about a new way to think, but a new way to move. What if the self is not a noun, a thing to be understood, but a verb, an action to be performed? When Eckhart Tolle speaks of the power of now, he isn't describing a mental exercise. He is describing a total sensory engagement with the physical reality of the present. This suggests a radical shift in our paradigm. Transformation does not happen in the head and then move to the hands. It happens in the hands and then eventually convinces the head that a change has occurred. This realization is the first step out of the architect's fallacy. It is the understanding that friction, the actual painful resistance of the material world, is not an obstacle to change, but the very fuel that makes change possible. This isn't just a comforting philosophy. There are specific, observable markers in your daily life that reveal whether you are actually evolving or just decorating the inside of your cage. Let's decode them. To understand why the mind is such a convincing liar, we must first look at what the enigmatic teacher Gurdjieff called the law of friction. He often spoke of the human being as a complex machine that is essentially asleep, moving through life in a state of mechanical reaction. The first sign that you are moving from mere intellectual curiosity into actual transformation is when you begin to intentionally seek out resistance. Think of a blacksmith at a forge. The heat and the hammer are not the enemies of the iron. They are the only things that allow it to become a sword. In your life, the heat is the discomfort of doing the very thing your mind is trying to rationalize its way out of. Most people fail because they wait for the feeling of readiness, but Gurdjieff taught that the feeling of being ready is a trick of the mechanical mind to keep you stationary. You do not wait for the fire to feel warm before you start the forge. You start the forge to create the fire. This leads us to a practical realization about the nature of the will. You have likely experienced those moments where you know exactly what you should do. Whether it is making a difficult phone call, starting a grueling workout, or sitting down to a complex task, and yet you find yourself scrolling through your phone, reading about how to be more productive. This is the gap where transformation dies. The ancients called the bridge across this gap the alchemical friction. It is the moment you choose to act specifically because you do not feel like it. The practice here is deceptively simple but incredibly difficult. Choose one small necessary task today that you are currently overthinking and execute it with zero internal dialogue. Do not argue with your mind. Do not explain to yourself why it is important. Simply move the body. You are not trying to complete the task as much as you are trying to prove to your biological machine that you, the conscious observer, are the one in the driver's seat. This act of intentional suffering, as Gurdjieff called it, begins to crystallize a new kind of self that is not dependent on moods or thoughts. But as you begin to exert this will, you will inevitably run into a second, more subtle barrier that exists deep within your own psyche. The second sign of real change is the transition from knowing your shadow to actually integrating it through behavior. Carl Jung famously stated that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. However, many modern seekers get stuck in the imagining phase. They spend years in therapy or self-reflection, mapping out their traumas and naming their demons, yet they remain just as possessed by those demons as the day they started. This is because the shadow cannot be integrated through thought alone. It must be integrated through the circumambulation of action. Integration happens when you take the energy of your repressed anger and use it to set a firm boundary in the real world. It happens when you take your repressed desire for power and use it to lead a project or take responsibility for your community. If you find yourself constantly analyzing why you are the way you are likely using Jungian terminology as a sophisticated shield against the how of change. The practical shift here is to stop asking, why do I feel this way? And start asking, what action is this feeling preventing me from taking? If you feel a wave of social anxiety, the thought-based person analyzes the childhood origin of the anxiety. The action-based person recognizes the anxiety as a sign that they must speak up in the meeting. The shadow is not a puzzle to be solved. It is a reservoir of raw energy that is only dark because it is not being used. The moment you put that energy into a physical deed, the darkness becomes light. You have probably noticed this yourself. The things you fear most often contain the very seeds of the person you are supposed to become. But there is a specific state of being where the struggle of the will and the integration of the shadow merge into something far more fluid. This brings us to the third portal, which is the experience of flow. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, the psychologist who pioneered the study of optimal experience, found that the moments when people feel most alive and transformed are not moments of passive reflection, but moments of intense, directed action. When you are in flow, the self-conscious I, the part of you that worries, doubts, and overthinks, actually disappears. You become the act itself. The climber becomes the mountain. The painter becomes the stroke. Most people fail to change because they are too obsessed with the self that they want to change, rather than losing that self in a task that is greater than them. This is the great paradox. The more you think about your transformation, the less likely it is to happen, because the thinker is the very thing that needs to be transcended. To apply this, you must look for the sweet spot of challenge. If a task is too easy, you are bored and your mind wanders back into its old patterns. If it is too hard, you are anxious and you paralyze yourself. Real change happens when you find an action that is just at the edge of your current ability. This is where deep work becomes a spiritual practice. When you commit to a difficult task for 90 minutes without distraction, you are doing more for your spiritual evolution than 1,000 hours of mindful lounging. You are training your consciousness to stay anchored in the material world, resisting the gravitational pull of the wandering mind. This is how you build what the ancients called the body of light, not through meditation alone, but through the focused application of energy toward a meaningful goal. But what happens when the goal feels too big and the mountain seems too high to climb? This is where we encounter the fourth principle, often articulated by Jordan Peterson and rooted in the observations of Rudolf Steiner, the sanctity of the micro-order. There is a reason why the advice to clean your room resonates so deeply. It is because your external environment is a physical manifestation of your internal state. You cannot think your way into a disciplined mind if you are living in physical chaos. Steiner believed that the physical world is the condensed version of the spiritual world. Therefore, every time you bring order to a small corner of your physical reality, by washing a dish, organizing a drawer, or tending a garden, you are performing a micro-sacrament. You are acting upon the world, and in response, the world acts upon you. Most people fail because they try to change the macro version of their lives, their career, their destiny, their soul, while ignoring the micro. They want to be a master of the universe, but they aren't even a master of their own laundry. The practice here is to treat every mundane action as if it were a high ritual. If you are sweeping the floor, sweep it with the same reverence you would use if you were cleaning a temple. This bridges the gap between the mundane and the sacred. It grounds your lofty aspirations in the dirt of reality. As Peterson often points out, if you can't even handle the small responsibilities that are right in front of you, you have no business trying to tackle the mysteries of the cosmos. By mastering the micro, you build the moral muscle required for the macro. You begin to realize that the universe is not just a place you live in, it is something you are constantly co-creating through your smallest deeds. This leads us to the fifth dimension of our journey, which Ken Wilber describes as the integral approach. Wilber argues that for change to be permanent, it must happen in 4 quadrants simultaneously. The internal subjective, your thoughts; the internal objective, your biology; the external subjective, your culture; and the external objective, your systems and behaviors. Most seekers focus exclusively on the internal subjective. They change their mindset. But if you don't change your external behaviors and the systems of your life, the other quadrants will eventually pull you back down. Action is the only thing that can touch all 4 quadrants at once. When you take a new action, you change your brain chemistry, biology. You challenge your old beliefs, mindset. You alter your relationship with others, culture, and you change your physical results, systems. To make your transformation integral, you must stop looking for a single silver bullet solution. Instead, ask yourself, what is the one action I can take that would have the biggest ripple effect across all areas of my life? Perhaps it is waking up at 5 a.m. That single action is physical, mental, and systemic. It creates a space for reflection, it builds discipline, and it changes the structure of your day. By focusing on keystone actions, you bypass the exhaustion of trying to change everything at once. You find the one domino that, when knocked over, brings down the rest. You are no longer just a thinker or a feeler. You are an integrated being whose will is aligned with the structure of reality. And yet, there is one final, silent layer to this process that ties everything together. The sixth revelation, is what Eckhart Tolle and the ancient Taoists describe as the silence of the deed. There is a specific kind of failure that happens when we talk too much about our plans. You have likely noticed that when you tell everyone about your new goal, you feel a sense of satisfaction, as if you've already achieved it. This is because the brain doesn't distinguish well between the social validation of a claim and the actual achievement of a goal. Talking about transformation is a leak in your alchemical vessel. It lets the pressure out. The true master of action is often the most silent. They do not announce their change, they simply inhabit it. The practice here is the quiet month. For the next 30 days, work on a significant change in your life without telling a single soul. Do not post about it on social media. Do not discuss it with your friends. Let the results speak for themselves. This builds a tremendous amount of internal psychic pressure. Because you cannot release the tension through talking, you are forced to release it through doing. This is how you develop presence. Presence is not something you do in meditation. It is the quality of a person whose actions are so aligned with their being that they don't need to explain themselves. Now that we understand how the universe rewards the silent deed, we can recognize the second language it uses to guide us toward our ultimate destiny. But as we move from these practical steps into the deeper mysteries, a final question emerges. Who is the you that is actually doing the acting? Here is where we must face the most unsettling revelation of all, the one that the mystery schools kept hidden behind layers of allegory, and the one that modern psychology is only beginning to touch with trembling hands. We have spent this journey discussing how to act, how to bridge the gap between thinking and doing, and how to use friction to forge a self. But now we must ask, who is the I that is actually performing these deeds? If Gurdjieff was right, and we are born as a collection of thousands of tiny conflicting I's, one that wants to exercise, one that wants to sleep, one that wants to be a hero, and one that is terrified of the dark, then transformation is not about improving yourself. It is about the violent, beautiful, and necessary act of creating a self where there was previously only a crowd. This brings us to a mind-bending paradox that bridges the gap between ancient Hermeticism and the outer edges of quantum theory. We often think of time as a river flowing from the past into the future, and we see our actions as the result of our history. But what if the higher self that Carl Jung and Rudolf Steiner spoke of is not some distant abstract deity? What if it is literally you, the person you are destined to become, already existing at the end of your personal timeline and sending echoes backward through the fabric of reality? In this view, your intuition is not just a subconscious calculation, it is a memory of the future, the sudden, inexplicable urge to take a specific action, to walk down a different street, or to finally start that project you've been avoiding. These are not random sparks of thought. They are the magnetic pull of your future self, trying to guide your present mechanical body across the threshold of existence. Every time you choose action over contemplation, you are closing the circuit. You are making a physical connection with the person you are already supposed to be. This realization creates a moment of mental vertigo. It means that the resistance you feel, the procrastination, the fear, the intellectualizing, is not just laziness. It is the friction of two different versions of you competing for the right to exist in the material world. The mechanical man wants to stay in the past, repeating the cycles of habit and thought. The conscious man is trying to be born through the medium of your deeds. When you act despite your thoughts, you are performing a revolutionary act of soul creation. You are literally pulling yourself out of the abyss of non-being and into the light of reality. This is why the great masters always insisted that the path is narrow and that few find it. It is narrow because it requires you to give up the safety of your mental maps and step into the fire of the unknown. But what are the actual implications of living in this state of constant, conscious action? If we accept that our deeds are the only things that possess weight in the scales of the universe, then we must accept a terrifying level of responsibility. Every choice you make, no matter how small, is not just affecting your future, it is resonating backward and forward through time. That difficult decision you are currently avoiding is not just a minor inconvenience. It is a blockage in the flow of your entire existence. Your future self might be desperately trying to nudge you toward it through synchronicities, dreams, and that nagging feeling of not being quite right. The question is no longer, how do I change? The real question becomes, are you brave enough to listen to the person you have already become? This shifts the entire ethical foundation of our lives. In the materialist view, inaction is neutral. If you don't do anything, nothing happened. But in the view of the perennial philosophy shared by Steiner and Wilber, inaction is a form of spiritual decay. It is the choice to remain a ghost. To be sovereign, as Jordan Peterson might say, is to accept that you are the architect of your own temple, and every brick must be laid by hand. There are no shortcuts. There is no amount of enlightenment that can replace the simple, grueling necessity of doing the work. You cannot think your way into a new life. You must act your way into a new way of thinking. This is the alchemy of the will. It is the process of turning the lead of our mechanical impulses into the gold of conscious presence. As we reach the end of this exploration, we find ourselves standing before the great dilemma. We live in an age that worships the intellect while starving the soul. We have more information than any generation in history, yet we feel more paralyzed than ever. We have mistaken the digital shadow for the physical substance, but the ancient wisdom remains unchanged, standing like a silent monolith in the desert of modern distraction. The Emerald Tablet says, "As above, so below, as within, so without." This means that the entire cosmos is not something you are inside of. The cosmos is something that is happening through you. You are the point where the infinite meets the finite, and that meeting place is called action. The mystics said that the ultimate reality cannot be spoken, only experienced. Perhaps that's because we're not trying to discover something outside ourselves. We're trying to remember what we've always been. If consciousness is the ground of all being, and you are consciousness experiencing itself through a temporary human form, then the you who is reading these words right now is just the tip of the iceberg. The rest of you is waiting in the actions you have yet to take. Every time you move, every time you choose the difficult yes over the comfortable no, you are waking up a little more. You are proving that you are not just a machine reacting to stimuli, but a creator god in training. So we are left with the final question, the one that never really gets answered because it can only be lived. If your life is a message sent from the future to the past, what does the next paragraph say? Who or what is really behind your eyes in the moments when you finally stop thinking and start being? If these ideas resonate with you, consider subscribing to The Hunt. This channel is a journey into these mysteries, not a destination. There are no final answers here, only deeper questions that require the courage to move. We don't just want to know the truth, we want to become the truth. And maybe that is exactly the point. The hunt continues.